talk today, discipleship in a digital age. Discipleship in a digital age. And just for the sake of my own sanity, I'm trying to use a little, the formatting will be a little bit different, so I could appreciate your feedback at the end, because the formatting today will be a little bit different than something that we're accustomed to. So I don't mind your feedback at the end with the way things will be formatted on the screen. Discipleship in a digital age. Let's pray. God, we're thankful for this day and the day that we live in, God. It's an exciting time to be alive.
Sorry, I didn't quite catch that.
Not you, Siri. It's an exciting time, God, for us to be alive. So we thank you for this privilege. What a privilege it is to live in this time that we live in. So God, as we live in this time, help us to understand the times that we live in. Help us to be conscious of who we are, whose we are, but also help us to be conscious of the times that we are alive in this age that we live in. So God, as we look at your word that was written thousands and thousands of years ago, we pray, God, that it has some relevance for the times that we live in. For we understand that we live in some challenging times. So speak to us, God. Help us to see better today than we were able to see yesterday. Help us to have a greater understanding today than we may have had the day before yesterday. Speak to our hearts. Speak to our minds. Help us grow and stretch us so that we may be the men, women, boys, and girls that you has destined for us to be. And as we look at your word, God, challenge us as the church, challenge us as your body to be better today than we were even yesterday. God, I ask that you will forgive me of my sins and my transgressions and iniquities, and allow me just this, what a privilege it is, and allow me the privilege to stand here and be an instrument to your honor. In Jesus' name that we pray. Amen. Amen. Discipleship in a digital age. Make no mistake about it, whether you want to admit it, embrace it, or maybe even try and ignore it. But with the formation of the internet and social media, you and I live in a time that is unlike any other time. We are living, some would suggest that we are living in one of the greatest communication shifts in the last 500-600 years. Some would suggest that since the printing press, there's been no other time in human history like now. Because it was when the printing press was invented that invention reshaped human behavior. In the mid-1400s, when Johannes Gutenberg created the printing press and knowledge was now being printed, it changed the landscape of humanity. It changed how humans interacted with one another. Because it was during that time that prior to the printing press, knowledge was shared orally. There wasn't much writing. In fact, writing was only reserved for those who were rich and affluent. So prior to the printing press, our knowledge was passed down through oral tradition. So people had to tell you what they knew. And some of us can even remember, some of us may be old enough to even remember times where grandparents or great-grandparents would tell us stories about our family. And those stories would get passed down from generation to generation because during those times, there were not many people who had the ability to write, let alone the means to write. So then with the invention of the printing press, now we're able to take knowledge and put it in book form, and put it in newspaper form, and put it in magazine form, and put it in written form, and therefore then knowledge and information can be shared in bulk. Because we have books and we have newspapers, and therefore information can be shared in bulk. And it was still kind of expensive because you had to pay for the books. So knowledge then was still, it was very expensive when there wasn't much writing, because knowledge was only shared by those that were rich and affluent. And it was still somewhat expensive after the creation of the printing press, because then you still had to be able to afford newspapers and afford books and afford magazines. So it was still somewhat pricey during the 1500s, 16s, and 17 and 1800s. But now, in this age we live in, the age of technology and social media and the age of internet, knowledge is cheap. Because all you have to do is pull this out and let your fingers do the walking. You can go to various websites. You can go to some universities and never step foot on their campus.
Yeah.
And get instructed and get classes from people who are tenured professors on their campuses, because knowledge now has gotten a lot cheaper with the internet, with this digital age that we live in now. In this digital age we live in now, everybody has a voice. All you have to do is create a website, create a YouTube channel. Everybody has a voice, and almost everybody can seem like they're an expert now. Because we live in an age that is unlike any other, all because of this little invention called the internet and this stuff that we call technology, these cell phones, these little computers that we now carry around in our purses and in our pockets. These little things that if we leave home and forget it, we'll turn around. Right. We don't check for a driver's nonsense. Where my phone? Because this thing now has shaped and shifted the way you and I even behave. Mm-hmm. Some will say that this invention is more powerful than even the invention of the automobile. Because with the automobile, all you can do is drive it. That's all you do. You just drive it. Drive it to wherever you want to go. This little thing, it'll give you directions. You can learn on it. You can shop. You can get education from it. I mean, it shapes. This thing has changed the landscape of how human beings even interact with one another. This digital age that we live in has been like more powerful than any other age in human history. Because this thing now is shaping our behavior. And how do we navigate now in a world that's moving at the speed of light? How do we make our way through a society now that has become so technologically advanced that we're experimenting with cars that drive themselves, that we're experimenting now with artificial intelligence, and that we walk around with these little devices now that so many of us, that billions of us, are more connected to. There's some social prognosticators that say that more people have cell phones than toothbrushes. That there are little villages like in Candai, Panama, that do not have running toilet water, but people have cell phones. Because this little thing, this digital age that we live in now, it has changed how we behave as humans. You ever notice like families go out to eat and everybody sitting at the table on their device? Or people can ride in the same car and one's, or walking down the street or sitting in corporate, in business meetings at work, listening to the presentation, but also on a device. Because we live now in this digital age, and how does the church even now function in this age that we live in? How does the church now continue to try and reach people for God in an age now that is unlike any other time in human history? Does the church take the same posture that Blockbuster did and say, we'll never change? Does the church take the same posture as A&P and say, we're never going to do things any different? This is who we are. We'll keep doing it this way. Like it or leave us. Does it pull out a page from the book of Kmart and say that we'll never do delivery of merchandise? Or how do we function now in a society that is so different, in an age that is highly advanced with technology? Well, believe it or not, Jesus shows us. He shows us how it is that the church has to function now in an age that is so different, in an age that is different than it's ever witnessed before. As we see him begin to recruit his own disciples, we see from his example how it is that the church now has to function. Because the reality is that churches all over America are closing their doors. Big churches, small churches, medium-sized churches, real tiny churches. Because the age that we live in now is so different. And many churches are not learning how it is then that we navigate this process. How then do we continue to work for God and serve God in an age that is digital now? Well, let's look at how it is that Jesus recruits his disciples. And there's some things that we can pull out of there from him that help us see how the church ought to function. Well, one of the first things we find from Christ is his encounter with Simon and Andrew is that we have to engage in connection. It's right there in verse 16. We'll see that Jesus has to engage in connecting with Simon and Andrew. Can you pull up verse 16? It says, now as Jesus was walking along the shore of Lake Galilee, he noticed two brothers fishing, Simon and Andrew. He watched them. He watched them as they were casting their nets into the sea. Here we find that Jesus goes to Lake Galilee where there are some fishermen, namely Simon and Andrew, who are fishing. They're at the lake fishing. He watches what they're doing and understands that now he has to engage them. He can't wait for them to come to him. He watched them as they were casting their nets. Now this is what's good for us to understand about Jesus. Jesus understands something, and the church has to begin to embrace it as well, is that we have to engage in connecting with people based on the platform of where people are. He goes to the lake where he finds two brothers fishing. He watches them for a while because he knows that, listen, I have to go where they are, see what they're doing, understand the platform that they're using, so that then I can engage in connecting with them. See, what sometimes where we fall short as older generations, we want to ignore the platforms that the younger generations are using. Got cold on this side. Thank y'all. It's the same way when we were growing up. The things that we were doing, the older generation thought was being influenced by the demonic. Y'all going to them clubs. Y'all went to, well, they didn't call them clubs, they called them juke joints. Right? Y'all going in and look at that that skirt she got on. Well, yeah, I could say this, I'd be offensive. You wore skirts like that when you were that size. Come on, it's just us in here. We can talk. It's just us. It's just, yeah.
Go on, Pastor. Open up on the Pastor.
Short skirts didn't somehow get created in the 20th century. They've been around. That's your mama you talk to. That's between y'all. Y'all have to deal with that. I got my own issues. Sometimes I'm like, girl, where you going? But seriously, we have to, as the older generation, right, see the platforms that the younger generation are using for connection and communication, right? And now, and we have to engage in those. I know it's difficult because then we have to learn some stuff that may be difficult to learn. And sometimes it's hard for us to want to be taught something when we get of a certain age. But we have to, as a church, begin to understand that the young people use different platforms for communication than we did. Remember, there was a time where evangelizing and going out to see the lost meant you took these little paper tracts and you went out on the street corners and you start passing them out to people.
Yeah.
That worked then. Now we got this little thing. That you can contact people in different states, different parts of the world.
Yes.
And if we look at this as being the enemy, we'll never engage them in the platforms that they're using. And then they'll go around saying stuff like, y'all so old. Right? Y'all just don't understand. Right? Because see, we can't impose on young people to be younger versions of us. A lot of times that's what we want them to do. You know, okay, I'm going to let you do it, but this is the way you need to do it. And then young people are like this. If it's going to be all that, right, Jasmine? Just go ahead and do it yourself. Right. So as a church with multi-generations in it, we have to, how do we still disciple and reach people? We have to engage in connection on the platforms that are being used today. Because 30 years from now, 40, 50 years from now, it will be their problem. It'll be their problem. And then they'll be running around, and their kids and grandkids will be like, y'all so old. Why y'all act like that? So Jesus goes to the Lake of Galilee, where he finds two brothers fishing, and he watches them. He watches what platform are they using. Because see, during that time, there were really only a couple places for people to go in order to really to do well and connect with other people. It was either fishing or farming. Fishing and farming. So what he does is decide, I'm going to the Lake of Galilee. Right? And I will find some people there. He notices Simon and Andrew and watches them. So one of the things, like, in order for us to to navigate this digital world now that we live in, we have to engage in connection on the platforms that young people are using. Now, that does not mean this, Grandma and Granddad. Doesn't mean Granddad got to walk around with his pants sagging. The last thing we need is great-grandparents trying to act like they 15. We don't need that. We don't need that. So we have to engage in connection. But the second thing, and this is critical for the age that we live in, this digital age where there's so much stuff online. Secondly, we have to elicit transformation. See, in verse 17, Jesus does something to them. He rocks their world. What he says to them in verse 17, he says, and said to them, come follow me, and check this out, I will transform you into men who catch people instead of fish. He's going to take them as they are and transform their lives. Now, he understands something about fishermen. That, fishermen are patient and stuff, and they'll wait and all that kind of stuff. And now what he does is he says, I'll take the temperament you have, I'll take the skills that you have, and now I will take those things and transform them and use them now to catch people rather than fish. In other words, what Jesus wants Simon and Andrew to understand is that when you connect with me, I'm going to take your life and transform it. In other words, your life will not be the same. I'll now have you fishing to catch people rather than running around chasing and trying to catch fish. This is critical for the age that we live in. In an age where there's so much fake news, and you don't know what is real and what is, what's untrue, the church has to make sure that it is engaged in transforming people's lives.
Yeah.
Look. This time that we live in, unlike no other, and what people want to see today is change. People want to see transformation. People want to see that if you've been hanging around this guy, Jesus, how has it transformed your life?
Yeah.
All right, Pastor.
In other words, how is it that this God that you say you love, this Jesus whom you confess and profess to, how is it that this person have made you a better person?
Right.
Transformation. Like, okay, well, what's he done in your life? See, people are hurting. And people want to see, like, okay, if there is this God, what has this God done to make your life different than it used to be? Because see, in this day and age now, like, people know you. Oh yeah. And they want to see, look, okay, how has this impacted you if you say it's good enough for me? And one of the things that has been becoming difficult, especially for young people to understand, that if this God is so good, how has your life changed? If this God is so powerful, how has he changed your life? Because the church has to be in the business of transformation. So you see, he engages in connection, but now he also elicits from them that I will transform. Just come follow me. I'll transform your life. You won't fish for fish any longer. You'll fish now for people. So in this digital world, right, where people are always searching for what's true, what's real. They want to see transformation. Here's the last thing. He engages in connection, right? He elicits from them transformation. But the third thing, and really critical, and in this age that we live in, is that there needs to be an exchange of profits for purpose. Jesus wants them to understand something. That the transformation that will take place will move you into purpose. In exchange, you'll let go of profits. We're going to dig a little bit. Because, you see, let's look at verse 18 real quick. He says, immediately they dropped their nets and left everything. Left everything behind to follow Jesus. Immediately they dropped their nets. These are fishermen. Fishermen understand how important nets are. They drop their nets and leave them behind because no longer are they interested in profits, but now it's purpose. With transformation comes the challenge of living in purpose rather than pursuing profits. Here, profits, remember, they fish for a living. So they catch fish, they go sell fish. They sell fish to make money for their families. They probably keep some fish so that they can eat fish. Right? That's profitable for them. Jesus comes along, interrupts that, and now they have to think of purpose. Purpose is so much harder to pursue than profits. Let that sink in for a second. Purpose is so much more difficult to pursue as a person than profits. Purpose means answering the question, why am I here? That's a more difficult question to answer than what car do I want to buy? What house? What apartment? Who do I want to date? Who do I want to marry? He has them now at a point where they're making a choice that we're not going to pursue profits anymore. We're going to pursue purpose. Because purpose is so much more deeper than the profits. Here, let me see if I can kind of illustrate it. Let me borrow some. Yasin, can I borrow you for a second? Desmond's like, yes, not me. Yasin, come on for a second. Hey, Desmond, will you just do me a favor? That's all. Can you bring the communion table over? I just want to try and illustrate this. How you doing? How was school this week? It was good? Good. No need to be nervous. It's not going to be difficult. Not going to be difficult. But what we're thinking about is perfect. Oh no, it's fine. It's fine. I've even done this one before. This one I kind of have this one. Thank you. If anyone has a problem with me using this table, please see Reverend Savoy. She said it was okay. I know sometimes people don't, whoa, that's the communion table. Sometimes people, you know I throw people under the bus, right? All right, so here we have a few utensils that we're going to use here. Okay. Now, Yasin, what grade are you? 10th grade. All right, 10th grade. All right, high school student. Where, Bowie? Is it Bowie? Largo. Largo. Okay, it's Largo. Anybody from? Ain't nobody repping Largo. Okay. All right. We have 4 utensils here. We have a bowl of water and an empty bowl. Now, what we would like to do is transfer water from this bowl to that bowl. All right, and we have 4 common kitchen utensils. What would you say this is?
To grab, more like to grab.
Okay, so this is like, what is it? Do you know what it's called?
I don't know.
Tongs, right?
Oh.
All right, this is a set of tongs,
Okay.
and you kind of do what with it?
You grab things with it to put in.
Cool. This?
To like, it's a fork.
Fork. And what do we do? Okay, like spaghetti. Right, you fork it. Right, you fork with a fork.
Yeah.
This?
A knife.
Knife, and we use a knife to
Cut things.
to kind of cut. And then lastly,
Spoon.
and we use it
To scoop.
to spoon. Okay. All right. So now, what I would like for you to do is use the tongs and take the water out of here, right? And let's put it in this bowl here. Okay? And we're going to let her take some time to go ahead and do that. It's okay. Take your time. We have time. Okay, there you go. You're working it now.
You're working.
What time did we get out of here? The next Sunday. Right. Okay, all right, guys. Never mind. Thanks. How did that, how was that for you?
A little difficult.
All right. We still have 3 other utensils. Let's try this one. Here, use it. Oh my God. Good. Now go ahead, you take your time. Yeah, I said, we're waiting on you.
President's Day's coming.
No? Okay.
No.
All right, no, that's not. All right. Here, we'll try.
The knife.
Let's knife it. Yeah, that should work. Now you're cooking.
Oh, wow.
Getting a couple jobs though.
He's getting there.
Yeah.
I mean, at least you get the A for effort.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
All right, let's try the last utensil that we have.
Here we go.
Boom. Let's try that one. Let's see what happens. Okay. All right, now we getting somewhere. All right, so Yasin, would you say that it's, which utensil would you say was easier to use?
The spoon.
The spoon. Okay. All right. Because, why?
I guess because of how deep it is in there. It's easier for more liquid to go into it.
Right, and it's used for what?
To scoop things.
It's used to scoop. Right, this is a highly scientific example because it's used to scoop, right? It's a spoon scooper, whatever you want to call it. Thank you so much. You're such a See, the purpose of the spoon is to scoop, not to cut, not to fork.
No.
But some of us are trying to function outside of our purpose. Because purpose, get this, purpose requires that I study myself. Right?
Yes.
Profits require that I study what I'm trying to get. So therefore it becomes more difficult and more challenging at times for me to live out my purpose because then I have to look in me and look at me with all of my frailties, my faults, my strengths. And how can I say this? Oh gosh. Some of us are good at denying who we are.
Yeah. That's it.
And walk around here trying to be a fork when you're really a spoon. Or trying to be a set of tongues because you like the way tongues look. But you were created to be a knife. And I dare not go that far and talk about like relationships because some of us, we trying to put two spoons together and wonder why we can't cut nothing. No, doggone, we can't all we can do is scoop. We ain't cutting nothing. Or two knives together, right, and can't fork a thing. Because all we do, cut each other up. But anyway, that's something else. Purpose is so much more powerful to live by than trying to pursue stuff. But purpose requires that I look at me and study me and see how God made me, what gifts God has given to me, what faults and shortcomings I do have, what things that are about me that I don't need to put myself in this kind of situation. Instead of denying looking at myself. So how do we function then? How do we disciple in this digital age? It's a different time. We have a different generation. A generation that sees things so much differently than we see them. Do we just deny them? Right? Or do we engage in connection where they are? Because you see, we live in a world now where people don't just go to church because it's famous. Because there's so many other things to do. And because of those little devices, you can listen to stuff and not have to step foot in the building. So then how do we function? We engage in connection where they are. We make sure that, hey, as we are on this wall, that we share transformative moments with people. People want to see that this God that you love so much and you care about so much has done something in your life, and I'll allow him to do something in my life if I see that he's done something in yours. But if you're still the same old grumpy person from 40 years ago when you gave him your life, and you still walk around here mad. You still walk around here, won't speak to people who made you mad in 3rd grade. Or disregarding people because hey, I don't really care for you. But lastly, and most importantly, man, am I just going to pursue stuff in this world? Or will I live a life of purpose? Like, what is my purpose? What am I here to do? Looking inward and then seeing how God has made me, how God has wired me. We're all different. And that's so beautiful. Because if everyone was the same, what a boring place it would be.